Hey everyone, welcome back to the High Tea Hoops podcast. This is Brian Bosche at the Duke of Hoops. Today, I'm so excited to be joined by the head coach of the Surrey Scorchers, Creon Raftopoulos. Creon, how's it going? Welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Brian. Appreciate you having me. Just trying to make ends meet right now, and we're just waiting to see when we can get playing.
Seriously. Yeah, it's been exciting to kind of transition more into BBL coverage and British basketball coverage from the NBA, which is what we've covered a lot in the WNBA on High Tea Hoops. And we were really excited for the season to start this weekend. We were all anticipating seeing the London Lions in the Basketball Champions League. There's a lot of momentum. And since it's kind of stopped with the delay of the season, unfortunately. But before we dive into all that, would just like to start off, for our listeners who may not know as much about your background in basketball, do you just want to run through maybe a quick timeline of how you became a head coach in the BBL?
I'll take you way back to when I first started playing. I'm originally from Zimbabwe, and playing in Zimbabwe was, Zimbabwe is a beautiful place. It was, great weather. My level of lifestyle that my parents provided for me was absolutely great. I wanted for nothing, got what I wanted.
And they're basketball players too, right?
Yeah. My dad probably one of the Zimbabwe legends going back in time and stuff. And then my mom also actually coached the national team, and she played also. So came from a basketball background.
Seriously.
And, just players in the house all the time, male and female and stuff. So kind of like grew up with it.
Yeah.
And then got into playing. And when I played, I think the ultimate goal was to play for our local club, which was called the Arcadia Bucks.
Okay. Nice.
Which was obviously had some which came from kind of like probably the Milwaukee Bucks back in the day and stuff in that day. And during that journey, I went to a school called Prince Edward High School, one of the top government schools in the country, and very renowned for winning in all areas in sports, from rugby to football to basketball. So that was the goal. And then I remember one day just being at the school and playing, and an American coach came up to me and asked me about myself and so forth, and asked me if I'd ever thought of going to play basketball in the States.
Yeah.
And to me, I was just like, nah, never really crossed my mind. And he was like, you're about, at that point, I think I must have been about 6 feet tall. He's like, oh, you're 6 feet tall. What position do you play? I said, I'm a point guard.
Yep.
Says, yeah, and you shoot the ball really well. And so he worked me out, and he was kind of like impressed. And then the next thing I knew, he was trying to arrange for me to go to America to go to a prep school, and found out it was kind of like linked to, at the time, I think it was Oklahoma State University.
Okay.
So at the time for me, it's like, this means really doesn't mean too much to me in terms of American coverage. Was all NBA.
Yeah.
We'd get we'd get VHS tapes if people brought stuff in, so you'd watch it on that. But only later on did they start bringing the games live, where we had to sit up until like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning to catch Mike and the Bulls doing their thing. So my journey was destined to go to America. My wife that I'm married to now, we were kind of like high school sweethearts and stuff, and we ended up having Kaylin at 18, and so that was like really young. And then my dad was like, you're in the real man's world now, you got to work, so forget about America. Can't do that
post-grad year at an American prep school.
It was done. That was it. It was like, you're going to the family business now, time to work out.
Yep.
So that kind of like took me on another path, and then at that point, our club was coming back up, the Arcadia Bucks. I was playing for the national team. And while I was playing for the national team, we got to play against some really good competition. So we played against, it was kind of like regionalized. So we had to play against Angola. And to put our national team training camp was like kind of like a week or two before we're going to play Angola. Angola's national training camp was go to America for a month and play against the Division I schools, because Angola's national sport was actually basketball.
Yeah.
So we got to play and hang out with the guys that played against the original Dream Team.
Wow.
And obviously after they got beat by the that the original dream team, they had a level of confidence that when they play anybody in Africa, it was going to be easy for them. So that was like a high level that we got to compete against and stuff. But within my journey, I always wanted to coach. So I started coaching at a really young age. I think I was the youngest coach in Zimbabwe to win a high school national championship. I was 19 at the time, and I coached St. John's College to a national championship. And so I knew I wanted to coach. And but yeah, that was the dream, was all just being involved in basketball. And then Zimbabwe kind of like took a change. And now Kalen at the time was about 7, 8 years old, and he loved sport. And I was like, is he going to get an opportunity because of the way things were changing in Zimbabwe? So I had been given offers in the past. I had an opportunity to go play professionally in Greece because of my Greek heritage, and close to going. Somebody told me that you're going to have to go do 2 years of national service in the Greek army. And I was like,
maybe
no.
not. Maybe won't do that.
I don't think so. So that was the end of Greece for when that came along. Left that on the side, and then ended up coming to England. And when I came to England, I was about 27 years old, and I was probably in my prime, and was going to work out for a couple of BBL teams, and I had a little bit of a window in which I didn't know what I was going to be doing. And a late friend, one of my mentors, Tony Hansen, who played for the University of Connecticut. He had a team up in Teesside and up north called the Teesside Mohawks. And he invited me over and said, why don't you come work out with us? And went to go work out with them. And then just crazily in a little summer game, I got injured. I hurt my knee. And I was like, oh, this don't feel good, So my plan was to go back home and get it sorted out. But then Tony contacted me and said, look, you got injured with us. Why don't you come back to Teesside? We'll help you get you right. I know you like to coach. I got an academy team. You can get involved with that. And I was like, okay, I probably could do that. That sounds like a plan. Spoke to my mom about it. Spoke to my wife, and she's like, yeah, let's do that. And so there I was now headed off to Teesside. So I'm in Teesside rehabbing. The plan right there is just to do a little bit of coaching, but play.
Get back on the court. Yeah.
Get back on the court. Now I'm a guy from Zimbabwe, so I'm now around some American players. I'm around British players, all great guys and stuff. But the more I got to meet people from England and some of the American guys, there was this element of entitlement and, like, man, they only gave me 3 pairs of sneakers. They need to give me more than that, man. They need to do this, man, this. And I'm coming from Zimbabwe where we played in the rain sometimes, we played in 38 degree heat. I know players that would have 1 pair of sneakers for an entire season,
Yeah.
And so I found it really difficult to adjust to that.
Was this in the early 2000s?
Yeah,
kind
early
of still
2001.
the BBL heyday a little bit. Yeah.
Where
they had more of the funding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And so I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And so Teesside Mohawks were playing in Division 1, which is just one league below BBL, but they play against BBL competition in one of the trophy games. It was a trophy that they all played for. And Teesside had some really good players and were able to compete. But, the BBL had a ratio of, they had 5 imports or 6 imports, and that would make the difference. But yeah, being around those guys, I just decided, like, I don't know if I want to do this here, if I can play. And I always had felt that I'd be that guy that would have bandages around his elbows and his knees, and they'd have to force me into retirement,
Yeah.
But with what I went through, I just decided, like, I want to help the young players to understand that, you don't play the game just because you want to get paid. We all started playing the game because we love the game. And so don't lose that element of loving the game. And so my transition into going into coaching was pretty smooth in that I wasn't too worried about playing anymore. The academy that Tony Hansen was running had a ex-BBL player and very good coach, Paul Douglas, that was there. And one of the prime players to come out of there was Kieran Achara, that played for recently for the Glasgow Rocks and so forth. And being around Kieran, working with him and coaching him, I could see that he was somebody special right from a young age. I actually named my youngest son Kieran after Kieran Achara because of how good Kieran was. And Kieran used to actually babysit Kalen for me and stuff. Or such a small world. But yeah, making that tradition and helping mentor young players and helping them go on to America and so forth, kind of like made me feel really good about what I was doing. Worked with the pro team, T side was still dominating, doing well. So I was still getting mentored, learning and coaching there. And then I think Tony reached a point where he didn't want to do coach anymore. And so he gave me the reins and I took over in Division 1. We got relegated the 1 year. And then I went back and I was like, no, I can't go out like that. And then we got promoted back to Division 1. And then I was like, okay, that's it. I'm done with the pros. I don't want to work with the pros anymore. I'm going to young players only. And I got moved down south, and then it was called Guildford Heat.
Yeah.
And I got approached to do some community coaching, and they're like, and they were doing a coaching change at the moment and at that time. And they were like, and I was like, as long as I don't have to work with the pro players, I'm good. I'm happy to just work with kids. And so they were like, okay, and start getting that program all together, helping the juniors, working with that. And they had a coach, a really nice guy, good player, Chad McKnight, was there for a year, but things never really worked out for him. And then the owner, Alan McClafferty at the time, called me in the office and asked me if I could find him a coach for the BBL team. And so there were a whole lot of people that were available. I think, so remember like Steve Bucknell and Gary Stronach and so forth. So I'm like ringing out these names to him and he's like, okay. And he looks over the names and then about a week or two later, he calls me in and he's like, yeah, really, really good coaches. You've offered me to, take over, but I think you're going to have to coach the team. And I was like, no chance, Alan, I don't want to do this. And he said, well, let's look at it this way. You're either going to have a job coaching the professional team or you're going to have no job. And then I was like, I love to coach in the BBL. This is going to be great. And that's
Good
pretty
move.
much how I pretty much got involved in the BBL.
Yeah.
But I had worked my way up. So there were a lot of coaches that had a lot of respect for me and felt that I'd earned my stripes to get to that point. First
year,
you started
so young.
Yeah, I know.
If you're coaching at 19, it's so good to hear about the transition too, because so many players, once they get out of pros or college or whatever high level they get to, it's a struggle to adapt to life without playing and without having that routine and team. And whether they go into coaching or media or business or whatever they transition to, it's hard. But you had that base of coaching from 19, coaching a national championship, which is, and then you already had 8 years of experience at 27 or 10 years at 29.
I had some experience, but the pro level was like something new, but I felt it was like just, I learned something very quick about the pros. Like if you want to get results, you need them to be on your side and you need them to believe in what you're doing. If you're paying them millions and hundreds of thousands, it's very easy just to get a whoop and do so forth. But when the BBL, the salaries aren't that high, the salaries are improving. You've got to have a relationship that the guy is willing to run through a brick wall for you and for the team. So I learned that like really quickly because I think that was one of the most important things that coaching at this level is man management. There's a lot of good coaches there that are great at X's and O's and so forth, but man management becomes a key factor if you're going to be able to do anything with these pro players.
Yeah, exactly. And this is in the 2000s, right? So this is when the BBL lost the TV deal, and it was a little bit of a lull in BBL. What was it like leading up to the 2012 Olympics? Because I know there was a lot of excitement and funding for basketball in the UK and the GB team. I know Kieran was on that GB team. What was it like, the excitement kind of leading up to those Olympics and the BBL? Did it carry over?
So I probably have an interesting story because I take you back to a thing that happened in Zimbabwe. Okay. And when I was in Zimbabwe in 1995, we were going to play. Zimbabwe were hosting the All Africa Games. Mm-hmm. So you have the Africa Championships that are big, and then you have the All Africa Games. And Zimbabwe were hosting the All Africa Games. And I was on that squad, and then basically like 2 days before, I got dropped from the team because they were bringing in another player. And I always tell kids and stuff that there because it happened to one or two other guys who just were like, we're not playing basketball anymore. Whereas I used it as fuel to kind of like, okay, you know, that hurt, that really, really hurt, but I'm going to keep on going and see where it takes me. And when you fast forward after a couple of years, everybody that was on our 1995 national team at that point, majority of them had retired, and I was still playing. So I kind of like outlasted a lot of guys. But going back to the All Africa Games was an opportunity for the Zimbabwe to build up a structure of arenas. And my dad was the chairman at the time, and was an outgoing chairman. And one of the things he spoke to them about was like, there's lots of money to build arenas. Let's make sure we get some arenas built. And they made a proposition to the basketball union to say, well, we got the city sports center that you play basketball at anyway. Why don't you just play basketball there? And it will be your building and so forth going forward. And I remember that they did that, and then they had a couple of one or two smaller structures built around for training purposes. But long story short, once the All Africa Games ended and they wanted to go into the City Sports Center to play basketball, they were like, no, you can't have it this weekend. There's church. Oh, no, you can't have it this weekend. There's a concert. Or you can't have it this weekend. There's a government rally.
That's not your arena then. Yeah.
It's not your arena. So we lost out. So when they were starting for the All Africa Game, for the 2012 Olympics, definitely a lot of excitement. All these guys were coming back in. It was happening on Surrey's doorstep because the Surrey Sports Park was actually hosting the futures practices and some of the lady practices. So I was lucky enough to be there, just like watching the training sessions, watching Nick Nurse and co just go through the paces with guys. And I knew Andrew Lawrence at the time. And he was one of the young guys coming through, and he was one of the surprise selections that made it onto that 2012 roster. But the England structure, so when they were interviewing me as a BBL coach, so what do you think about the Olympics and the legacy? Because it was all legacy. And I was like, I can't see these venues being built, so I don't know what the legacy is going to be. I'm like, I think those players are going to have an amazing legacy because it's something nobody can ever take away from the players. But in terms of facilities or a arena or a practice venue that's going to be here because of that, I can't see that being built. I can see a velodrome for the cycling. I can see some swimming pools. Those are going to be there when the Olympics go. But right now, from what I can see, they had made a temporary stadium for basketball, and the finals were going to be at the O2.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't see the O2 being the basketball arena on a weekly basis, you know? So I wasn't sold on legacy because of what I'd experienced in Zimbabwe in 1995. And then
O2 is not a place you could have consistent BBL games or have a BBL team located there. You're right. They'd get scheduled over all the time.
Exactly. Beyonce's coming in town, you know.
Yeah, sorry, you can't
wait on the side. Yeah, so and so because of that, having that experience, I wasn't too excited about it. But you know, Olympics came. We were, you know, obviously tremendously proud of, you know, the way the guys accounted themselves. It had been a long journey getting to there.
Yeah.
But you know, it looked like British basketball was on the map again and on the rise. You know, we had Pops, Mensabonsi, we had Luol Deng, you know, Joel Freeland, you know, so you had a core and there were NBA level players that were playing in the NBA, which was key, you know, rather than just like saying, you know, we got up and coming guys, but we had some really, really good players that were in the league also, which I think helps the country. But yeah, so 2012 went, and, you know, no stadiums. So I don't know, apart from the players and, you know, the players that played in there, you know, I don't see how basketball completely has benefited from that experience. It was a golden opportunity, but I think it could have been a lot better if we had got some arenas from it.
You know, it's as someone coming into the British basketball community in the last couple of years and learning more, it does seem like access to facilities is one of the top reasons that it's being held back. And listening to Vince McCauley on the Hoops Fix podcast and in his different interviews talking about how hard it was for the Lions to find somewhere to play. They ended up at the Copper Box, which, you know, at least there's one. But if you want affordable basketball courts, basketball arenas, they can be small too. You know, you're not trying to get 50,000 people or, you know, 30,000 or whatever is an O2 every game. And basketball is a sport where it's almost nicer when it's a smaller arena. You know, in Seattle, There's the Key Arena, which was just a madhouse because people are like on top of the court and it goes crazy. So you don't need like an enormous arena for that. But, you know, you see that there's only one London BBL team. You know, the Royals are gone, the Towers, you know, the Leopards, the whole legacy, because it's just too expensive and hard to find facilities in London and around the country, which is too bad. You know, I think you're right. I hadn't really thought about it from that, where, you know, you weren't too excited because there's not the facilities being built, but it makes a lot of sense for the legacy coming afterward.
Definitely.
And probably hurt them. But so that was the Heat, which you're repping still with your Miami Heat hat, which I think went to the Surrey Heat, right? It just kept the Heat and then they changed it to the Scorchers.
Changed to Surrey Heat. That's right. Yeah.
So that was 2010 was when you became the head coach for the first time in the BBL.
That's right. Yeah, that sounds all right. Yeah. So it was Guildford Heat, and then I did one season as Guildford Heat, and then the following season was Surrey Heat.
Yeah. And to kind of skip forward a little bit to what I love this in Wikipedia, it's the franchise's new era in 2015 is the Surrey Scorchers. They brought you back as the head coach after, you know, in and out a little bit. And since then, the team has seen a lot of growth, you know, growing from the 2015 to 2016 season all the way through. Last year was a little bit of a lull, it seemed like. But what has it been like growing this program in Surrey, where you've had good success the last few seasons? And, you know, you didn't get rated last by the BBL podcast show. You're still in the mid-tier of BBL teams this year, so there's hope for you. But what has it been like growing this program over the last 5 years?
I think, like you're saying, that's the big part of it is I accept that fans are fans. You know, I'm wearing my Manchester United top today.
I know.
This just a little bit.
You play us. I'm a Tottenham fan. Sorry, so we play on Sunday. It's going to be. Don't hang up on the podcast.
No, I won't.
It'll be fun.
So this is it's a special one for me because I lost my dad like 3 years ago, and today's actually his birthday. So I thought, you know what, I'll represent him and I'll throw on the United top and stuff and that there, especially for him. So that's why I'm in these colors.
Yeah. So. Sorry to hear that, but yeah, you're honoring the United.
Yeah.
You love to see it.
So back to like with that building a franchise or getting to a point is when we got there, you know, and there's a guy that the Scorchers fans owe a lot to is Gavin Baker, who was started off kind of like as the GM and is now managing director of Surrey Sports Park, because he's got a passion for basketball and he fights for everything that's basketball. And when he spoke to me and he told me what we are trying to do, I said, like, you know, it's going to take some time. But, you know, we can get from, you know, where we were 0 fans to being probably one of the best supported clubs in the BBL. And that the key part was working with all the local clubs in the area. And I've always made time to work with the local clubs and do coaching with kids and stuff. So I had that kind of like rapport with some of the coaches. So they were happy to promote the Scorchers to their kids, because that's one of the culture things that happens in English basketball. It's English sport basketball that sometimes needed fixing. Is we'll go on about how, you know, it's one of the most popular sports in the country and so forth, and then a team will struggle to fill an arena up because and that's because you need to get the coaches on board, because kids believe in anything their coaches say. So if their coach says go watch BBL, the kids will go watch BBL. But if the coach don't like BBL, there's no chance those kids are going to go and watch BBL. You know, kids' heroes aren't necessarily going to be the superstars, but are going to be people that they come in regular contact with. And so I kind of like knew that working with the teams, coaches, the local team coaches, and the communities, that would make a big difference.
It's huge. Like I grew up a Denver Nuggets fan. So I lived in Denver. I moved there in the late 90s, and it was literally, I think, one of the worst teams in NBA history. We had like Nick Van Axel starting, Antonio McDyess. It was a terrible era for Nuggets basketball. I think we set the record for most consecutive losses in a season. It was bad, but I was on the junior Nuggets team, and so I loved the Nuggets. I loved Nick Van Axel. It didn't matter how good they were. It didn't matter if they weren't stars. And they went into the community, and I loved it.
Exactly. And just as you're saying there, like, so when we were going as Scorchers and we got going, it's a weird one because, like, you lose a game by 3 points, and you devastated. You're like, man, lost another one. But the people, the fans and the kids, they smiling and they kind of like, it's okay, we're gonna win the next one. And
Yeah.
they so happy that just because we put the time into being in the community. Don't get me, like I always say to people, don't get me wrong. I would love to win. I'm a competitor. I always tell the guys, in my lifetime, I've played about 50 games of Monopoly, of which only 3 finished. All right. The 3 that finished were the 3 that I
That is the
won.
hardest game to finish. And
Yeah.
you won all 3.
The other ones, the drink went across the board, or
Just smashing the board across.
something happened. I even had to stop playing golf because of my competitiveness, because if the round's not going well, then it's like, what's the use, So I am competitive and I want to win, but I got to be realistic about stuff. And one of the tough things at Scorchers is we do a lot right, and we're very honest when we bring the players in, so the players can't ever complain about, oh, you said this would happen or that would happen. So we look after the players, but I have to accept that they're going to get a better offer for the following season. Mm-hmm. And so that continuity, that building of culture, it becomes very difficult. So we got great culture developing within management and off the court, which is good. But the culture on the court, you need a core of regular guys to be able to kind of like keep that going. And that's what has been a big challenge. So it has been a lot of highs, a lot of lows and stuff in that, and like you said, you're going to have like the social media people are going to like, the fans are going to go out there and they're going to let you know how they feel and stuff and that. So I'm one that understands the importance of social media, but I love social media for positive. Mm-hmm. On the other side of it, where people use it to vent and to get at people, I don't worry about that for me because I'm not on social media. Mm-hmm. But I do worry about that for my family because my family kind of like has to read that and has to go through, somebody's having a bad day, so let's take it out on Coach Creon or so forth. But I think developing that culture within the Scorchers and we kind of like on a good journey and I'm not trying to coach forever. It's about finding the next people to come in, but I want to do what's best for that franchise. I mean, it's time for me to step aside. That's what I'll do. But right now, I've still got the energy and the fight to want to win, and so that's why I continue where I am.
Yeah, two really good points there. I mean, for social media and sports, you're in the hardest industry. I've worked with a lot of sports teams, a lot of the social media managers at a lot of the professional sports teams in the States and in the UK. It is brutal. Like, just don't read the mentions. Don't search your own name. Like, it is not worth it. Nothing constructive. You're right. It's just venting. And you just kind of got to take it. And that's a tough part, especially for an athlete, or especially if you're in the organization, to read that.
I get told when people get to know me, they kind of go like, you're actually a really nice guy. And I'm like, oh,
what are you reading?
Thank you. And then it's like, well, when I saw you on the court coaching, you look so. I said, well, I'm in the game. That's like the game zone and so.
Yeah, have you played Monopoly with this guy? Like, it's a different state.
Totally. And so you kind of like have to remind people that, like, and say, I kind of like try and say, I'm human.
Yeah.
And the players are human, and so when people on social media and you got a guy that's, his alias is Darth Vader, or he's got some different name and you don't know who the person is I do something after all our games. All right. Mm-hmm. And if we win a game, I'm out of there. Yeah. As great as it feels to win a game, I'm out of there. I'm like out of there. I'm into my change room. I go say my prayer. Thank you, God. We got this win. And I'm out of there. I'm like, good. It's going to be a good week. When we lose a game, I sit there and I watch who's the genuine fan. I'm watching like, who's the fan that's staying back to say to the guys, tough luck guys, next game, tough luck guys, next game. And the part that people don't understand about that is it's so difficult because sometimes a person that's just could be ripping you to pieces is the same person that will want to smile and shake your hand after you win a game. Mm-hmm. And then the players and the coaches, we got to be that same professional person, you know. And the BBL is growing You know, things are on the up because of the help of social media, because we know we're not on national TV. Yeah. And the BBL franchise do an app, like, as you finding out with all the research you're doing, the BBL franchises do an amazing job of putting on a professional show. Mm-hmm. And so the perception is that we are on the level as Premier League football players and Premier League coaches, which is so far from the truth. You know, people wouldn't know what a day in the life of Coach Creon is like compared to a day in the life of maybe Jose Mourinho, you know, but the perception is still one of it's professional. It's like this. And I accept that, but sometimes it's tough to just keep on having to explain yourself and like when not to listen, when to react. And stuff like that. So I'm lucky that a lot of fans are kind of like understand.
You're right. They're used to Premier League, and Premier League fans, wow, coming from the States, the level of passion and scrutiny is more than any sport I've seen in the States. So that's a very tough, and you're right. You get compared a lot to that because you do have a good production, but it's such the amount of funding, the amount of resources you have on the team, even, you know, if there's criticisms of, hey, the BBL is not marketing as well as it could this summer. Well, they brought in Selena Conroy, who I think has done a really good job, and started the podcast. And when people are furloughed, they can't work. There's nothing they can do, even if they want to. Like you don't understand that a lot of these teams, they might not even have a social media person. So criticizing them for not doing as much marketing, like you need the investment there. You're not a Premier League team, and it's tough. And, you know, I've been impressed with what I've seen from the different teams. You know, Tom setting this up for us. The production on a lot of these teams is good. It's just there aren't resources, and people need to understand that and be a little bit, you know, more positive about it. Because I am impressed with how the league has been marketing itself in the last few months leading up to the season.
They, you know, with what we have, the people that are there try their best to kind of like lift it as high as we can and stuff. And that's what, like I said to you in the beginning, you know, like I will do the podcasts, I will do the interviews and so forth, because it's a way of getting our brands out there, and you know, you never know who's watching. Somebody might be like, you know, this is such a good product, why don't I invest in it, and so forth, because everybody kind of like thinks that it's already all there, so nobody can get involved. But BBR is very open to it, sponsors across, you know, different businesses and so forth to get involved.
Another good point that you made was, you know, Surrey especially is a smaller market team within the BBL. Doesn't have 777 partners from the Lions, you know, with this investment to pay. And it reminds me a lot of, like, you know, what we see in the Premier League, where some teams have hundreds of millions, billions to spend on players and some don't. Same thing in the NBA. If you're not LA, if you're not the Knicks, well, the Knicks can't get anyone, but if you're not LA, it's a much different situation being in that mid-market. You know, I just spoke to one of the directors of marketing at the Thunder. And, you know, in Oklahoma City, that it's just different. They're not going to attract a lot of the same free agents.
I've been reading about how difficult that is. And that's still, you know,
still the NBA.
It's the NBA going to get paid multi-millions, and his agents like, that's not a good market for you. So
and you're talking about that, where you're going to have players, if they perform well at Surrey, are going to go somewhere else, just like Anthony Davis is going to leave the Pelicans and go to the Lakers or go kind of as that transition. So all you can really focus on is, how do we build that sustainable, good culture in the front office and with the culture of the team? And so that's actually one of the questions. Rob Hunt, who on Twitter is a Surrey Scorchers fan in his bio, so we've got someone there, asked this question: with the budget disparity in the BBL and what the Scorchers have available, what is genuinely achievable? Like, what do you see as some of the goals, maybe this season or over the next 5 years, with your current budget, with the level of the program? You know, you can speak for the Surrey and then maybe some other BBL teams as represent, you know, examples of the smaller market teams. Yes, what's achievable? What is really the goal here?
I think everybody knows that that's around sport, that, you know, the more money you can spend, the higher level, the higher the level the player is you're going to attract. Looking at our Surrey roster this year is the most experienced roster that I've probably ever had. And, you know, it was a group of guys that at a certain point in their career, and like we spoke about early on, is like, what's life after basketball? Because the guys that are on our roster, majority of them still got about 5 years, I would say, at least, in order to play. But now is the time that they've also got to be planning for life after basketball. You can't just play those 5 years out and then be like, okay, what do I do next? you know, and a lot of people forget or should remember that a lot of these guys have got their degrees from universities, but they got that degree almost 10 years ago or 12 years ago. So as soon as they get out, it's almost like, well, you got no work experience on that particular degree. So you might have to go get your master's, which I've seen with a lot of players where they have to end up going back to university in their 30s just to get back into the swing of things. But going back to the original thing of I've accepted where we are budget wise, and I've always been honest because I've been in situations where teams have had to fold. So I've never ever gone and banged on the door and said, if you just give me an extra £5,000, this is what I'll be able to do. It's not
sustainable.
It's just not going to be sustainable. So I try and do the best with what I've got. This year's team on paper and with the style that I like to play looks very strong.
Yeah.
And
you got some good new additions as well on the roster.
Definitely. And
Skylar
so
White, who's also Washington, Clyde Hill, right in my neighborhood.
That's right. He'll be rocking his Seattle Supersonics shorts
yes, he
all
will.
the time. So yeah. So with the roster that we have now, I would like to be able to add to it, but that's the budget done on the 8 bodies that I've got. So it's going to be hopefully keeping everybody fit. And I would say that with this roster, I would be aiming for a top 5. But I want to win stuff because I modestly do go into every league season going, we're going to be competitive. I promise the fans like Rob, and look, we're going to give it our all and stuff. But our fans are so loyal. I want to tell them that we want to go and try and win something, and I had one of my coaches in Zimbabwe used to always say to me, like, Creon, how many people play a game of basketball? So I said, 5 on the court against 5. He said, all right, all you need is 5.
5, yeah.
And I was like, okay. And he's like, if you get 6, that's a bonus. If you get 7, wow. If you get 8, wow. If you get 9, absolutely great, And so I'd gone away from that because I would try and fill a roster of 10. But this season I was like, you know what? I'm going to get some veteran guys. They might have to they might have to play in a certain way, but I think I can make this work. And the funny part of it is I always tell people, like, this isn't the Creon world of basketball. I'm a student of the game. I'm always learning. And one of the things that I sent to our captain, Teo, was I took some stats of 2 teams and I sent it to him. And I said, if we can do something similar to this, we're going to be like really good. And this was way before the playoffs started.
Yeah.
And he looked at the stats and he was like, I took out the team name and the players' names, but I put what they were averaging. And he was like, who they? And I said, just try and figure it out. And then he was like, he couldn't get it. And I said, that's the Miami Heat and the Toronto Raptors. All right. They play 7-man to 8-man rotations, and theirs is a 48-minute game. But when other people have to step in, they're ready to do certain things. So we're only playing a 40-minute game. So if we look after ourselves, you veteran or experienced guys, I don't like to call them veterans too much, but you experienced guys should be able to hold it together in order for us to be dominant enough with a small rotation. And so seeing Nick Nurse and Spoelstra do what they've done with their teams and with small rotations kind of like made me go like, okay, maybe it is possible for us to make it work this way. And that has been our approach. So if we can get into that top 5, that would be great. But nobody remembers who was in the top 5. So we will go full out to just try and win something.
I think you've even seen with the Lakers, you only need 2 really.
Not
to discount the role players.
I did tell them that I did tell the Lakers, as a coach, we like to be smug and think like we know stuff. And my players get upset with me because I always say, I told you so, even when I never told them so. But I said to them when Avery Bradley and Rondo weren't in the lineup, it's like, I don't know about the Lakers without those 2, and they were like, come on, man, why are you talking about, coach? Don't be so. And then Rondo came back and I heard the guys talking about like calling him playoff Rondo, which he hates because Rondo is just a great player. He just knows how to play the game. And he has been a difference maker, Rondo and Caruso, No disrespect to the talented J.R. Smith or Dion Waiters, but those are the guys that have made a
Yeah.
difference in the Lakers being great, because the two get to be the two.
Yes.
And
Supported
as
by
Shaq calls them, the others come in and do their thing. So
yeah. If Rondo's making threes at a 40% or 42% or whatever it is, that's with his passing and just, he's been there before. That's tough.
Yeah,
But
I
I think
was ready to switch off the TV when he made 1 3 and they said, and he's shooting at 45% from
it's
three.
like,
I'm
okay,
like, oh boy,
the Lakers don't need that.
No.
But I think that's a great point where, okay, you just need that core squad. You can push for it. Nick Nurse, and, you see Coach Bud and for the Bucks get criticized for not playing his best players enough.
Over and over.
Over and over. And so I guess that transitions into, if you're playing the players more, if you're trying to get that cohesive 6, 7, 8-man rotation, which the Raptors Heat comparison is great. I think the Heat almost had 5 people score over 20 points in a game. Like, you love to see that. What has it been like trying to get those players up to speed in the pandemic? It's been so hard to train. You mentioned you're playing outside in parks to try to get the team together. What has it been like trying to prepare the squad with so much uncertainty leading into the season and just trying to get them back in really game shape? Because I've told this to Josh Bett last week. I'm terrified to get back on a basketball court again after 7 months because I don't know what my body's going to
do. So we were fortunate in Surrey. We were really working overtime to get people back onto the court. Mm-hmm. And I tend to help as many teams in the league as possible with my summer workouts and getting guys together. And for me, it's not a Surrey Scorchers. It's Surrey Scorchers that make it happen. As I said, like having a director like Gavin Baker who allows me to do stuff like that is key. But it's developing a culture. If somebody had to ask, if you had to ask me a question, what is British basketball culture? I would be like, and maybe you could ask somebody else what is British basketball culture, and they would also struggle to where it is, and it's something that I think we're all working on doing. And so my thing is, like in the States, the best players get in the gym and they play against each other, and it helps raise their game and the profile of the game. And so that's my thinking of when we have these workouts.
Even pros do that. You see them in the offseason. All the best players in the NBA go together and train together.
Yeah. So when we got clearance and we were like taking people's temperatures and so forth and doing screening to get guys onto the court, we ended up with, we had 4 guys that are playing at Plymouth Raiders this year. We had Matthew Bryan Manning, who's now ended up playing again at Lions. We had a couple of the last sessions, we had Teddy Okafor, who plays in Europe, Rob Gilchrist. So we had a multitude of players from all over, of which I was lucky that I had Teo, Lavelle, Kalen, and Skylar, who I knew were coming back. So I had 4 guys. Like, oh, thank God, I got 4 of my guys are in here benefiting from all of this, And then when we started putting things together, Trayvon Wright had been working out with us for a season or 2. Mm-hmm. And so we knew what Trayvon was about. So like over the moon to have somebody like of Trayvon's ability coming in. And then Rashad spoke to me early when Plymouth said they weren't going to be taking him back. And we knew that he had been a top 3 scorer in the league. Yeah. And it was interesting because when he reached out to me, he's known as a scorer. And he said, Coach, like, if I can get on your team, I want to win. And I don't need the ball all the time. I will do whatever it is and that made the conversation a whole lot easier because we only have got 1 basketball and we know that people can score on our team. We do have a bunch of scorers. So getting him in was brilliant. And then Martel McLemore, I brought in Martel McLemore from Western Michigan when he was a rookie, and first 3 seasons he played for me in the BBL. He averaged close to 19 points a game without me running anything for him. So we knew he can play. He's in his 30s now, but he is looked after by Bob at Thames Valley Cavaliers. So every summer Martel would contact me, Coach, there's a workout here coming. Like, hey, Coach, I need to come back to the BBL. And we do this dance season in every summer for 5 summers running. And he'd go back and he'd go play with Thames Valley, which as long as he is good, I was happy. And then this year he is like, no, I've been speaking to Bob and, I think this is, I really got to get back in. And I was like, hey, your spot's there if you really want to do this, Martel. And so to get Martel was like big because he plays both ends of the court. And I still think he's still got a lot to prove. Yeah. He's got that chip on his shoulder. So he'd want to do stuff with us that will make a difference. So that made the roster a lot easier. And then just in our workouts, in the practices we've had, there has been a lot of selflessness. I know that can change as soon as there's a referee and kid on and so forth, but it's a mature group, you know, and I tell you something that, you know, we managed to get Connor Cashel in, who played at Sheffield and had a really big year at Sheffield, and he's come in and he looks like a natural point guard. He's so smart, but he's capable of scoring, so that excites me to another level. So it's just about keeping everybody fit, and then we'll see what we can do. But the guys suffer. Everybody, basketball players across the world, the amateur players, right to the pro players, they really suffered during the pandemic. You know, I remember the first session we had indoors. It was like kids' first day at school. They like walked into the gym. They like sat on the chair, and they like looked up and they were looking at the hoops and like, this is about to happen, you know. And then we counted the months, and it, you know, it was crazy. It was like March something that they've last been on
by,
on a basketball court, and that was late August that we got onto the court. So or early August. So it was tough for the players. And then once again, I had to be like, slow down.
We got
a whole go again. Season. I'm like, slow down. Like your body, you don't know what could happen to your body, because this could be a shock to the system. Your muscles aren't like they used to be. So we just had to like slow it down, because they were ready just to go crazy, all of them. But I think it was great to be.
I think you mentioned in one of your interviews, it's like, it makes you appreciate it more. It makes you appreciate the game and the role of it in your life. And we saw Kevin Love had a really good article this summer about mental health and basketball, and how players will associate, they are basketball. They are who they are on the court, and there is no one outside of it. And I hope a lot of the players had a chance to kind of assess things and see who they are outside of basketball and see how much it means to them.
Off of that, Brian, like, I can speak from a personal thing, because my own son, like Kalen came out with major depression, and you know, I'm living with him, and you know, we're going through, and I was like, whoa, like am I a bad parent? Like, how did I not know this? And he highlighted stuff in that day. And then other players that play, you know, that playing the BBL and play at a high level, and young players all started reaching out to him. And was like, oh wow, like it's so hard. It's so hard, and it's taken for granted. And there is that macho level to it, where you think you're so macho, you don't need to talk about this. That's being soft. And so I it's something I learned this summer, that I'll make sure that I always speak to my players, and I have good relationships with players that aren't also on my team. But I will ask, like, man, are you good? Like, is there anything you want to talk about? You know, and sometimes just listening to somebody helps. But I like Kevin Love and
Paul George during the playoffs, DeRozan,
started reading about what their journeys had been, and as we said, the perception's always that it's just amazing, but there are some demons out there that people just don't have control over.
Yeah, especially when you're playing competitively from 6 or 7 in a lot of these. It's just that's your whole life. I was a competitive tennis player growing up and traveled the country, trained at academies. Basketball was always my fun sport, which is why it's more sustainable for me now, and why I'm now playing basketball and not tennis, and totally burnt out of tennis. But you associate your identity with wins and losses, and it becomes your world. And if you're like, all right, if I'm not a ranked tennis player in the top 10, I'm nothing. And I think you're a better player on the court when you start to get some of that balance, and you start to, you know, work on your mental fitness. And enjoying it.
The enjoyment. I think that a lot of people just somehow lose that enjoyment. And I always try and say that to guys, like, look, hey, if we ain't enjoying this, then we got to stop. You know, we might as well stop, you know, because we ain't being paid $1 million a season to play. If you're getting paid $1 million a season, maybe
it's a job.
Maybe it's a job, but a little bit more, but you know. So
and there's only so much, you know, you have a role as a coach, a huge role as a coach, but I think, you know, having someone like Teo on the team, where I just listened to him on the Hoops Fix podcast, really impressed with just how well spoken he is, what his attitude is, him as a leader. What has it been with him kind of being that locker room presence, it sounds like he's like the in-between between the players and you and even the rest of the league, almost the spokesperson. What is it like having someone like that on your team to help as you're going through all of these, you know, this craziness of the season?
I think the amazing thing about a person like Teo is in a world where do they use that like FOMO, fear of missing out?
Yes, definitely.
So there's a lot of that. Like it's so scary that people don't want, they're so worried about missing out that they might make the wrong decision. And so when Taya and I spoke early, and we're like, so how long are you going to be traveling around the country, around Europe, trying to find that right job and so forth, and then come back? And that's why he kind of like made a decision, like, you know what, you're right. And he spoke to Gavin and agreed that he's just going to make Surrey home. And, he's going to get a mortgage, and, he's got his side business with his wife and so forth, and kind of like set that up. So he's got that level of maturity. And, a lot of guys look at him maybe enviously, but they look at him and be like, oh, how do I get the Teo deal and so forth? But what they don't realize is he's a very humble individual. I understand that from like social media, it might come across as like this, but he's good at his social media because it's part of what his business is.
Yeah, he's got to get sponsors and brands. That's a huge part of it.
And so he does that really well, but he comes across as being really humble. He works really, really hard. The one summer we went into the summer, and Teo was like probably shooting 20% from the 3-point line. And we said the whole summer we're going to work on it. We're going to go to the corner. And I rebounded for him. For him. What we doing today, coach? We're going to shoot corner threes, Teo. And we shot. What we doing today? Well, we shot corner threes, Teo. And we just did that. And then the following season, he is the best corner 3-point shooter in the BBL. So each time we challenge him to do something, he gets on it, and he does the right stuff. Yeah. He's also, along the way, I've always been on him about communication. Mm-hmm. We had a young player that has developed into one of the better players in the BBL, in Jordan Williams, that plays at Worcester Wolves. And when Jordan first came in, him and Teo were like banging heads. And I was like, Teo, like, you got to listen to Jordan. Like, you this age, Jordan's that age. If you guys communicate, it's going to be a big difference. And then we like spoke about it, but like, because like things change, like old school to where we are now. Some old school things are just illegal. Like, I can't throw a ball at a player anymore. Yeah. I might get sued or something. So some things have changed, and then him and Jordan start communicate, and then all of a sudden we got a duo that are good inside out. Yeah. But Teo's willing to listen, and is a very respectful guy, and so that makes my job like so much easier, knowing that he's not going to complain about stuff. I can just say to him, look, this is what we're going to do, Teo. That's what's going to happen. And he buys into it. And I think, like you said, he wants what's better for the league and for the players. And so hopefully, people have spoken about getting into a players union and doing stuff. And those are things that any professional league needs. And I know that the people are discussing stuff. So hopefully it's something that can be achieved.
Yeah. Well, you need people like that in leagues like this, where they can speak for the players. They have a little bit higher presence. They're there for the longer term and have bought in. It's also like earlier in the podcast, you're saying you show rosters to him and say, hey, this is the direction we want to go. And you're getting his buy-in so he can get the rest of the team to be bought in. So it's good to have that person to bounce off of. And speaking of team leaders, we have a lot of questions on Twitter about how's it having Joel out there? One of the best British basketball players of all time. I see him practicing in the gym with you guys, showing the step back, one-leggers.
Listen, he is – I get to work with a lot of high-level players. And the brilliant thing of having worked with Joe when Joe was in Portland, when he'd come to Surrey and get a couple of workouts and stuff and that. And then when he went to go to CSKA Moscow, which he'll tell you he never really enjoyed, but it was his job. And he went there and he'd come back. His skill set from just putting the hours in was just unbelievable. And so being able to work with somebody like him, I was able to kind of like, whenever somebody came in the gym, it made it easier for me. Like, listen, you need to be making 8 out of 10. When we do this drill, you should be getting no less than 8. Yeah. And because I had that level that that Joel was at, and was expected of him when he was playing in the NBA. So when he had retired, he came back and he's like, what's going on, coach? And I was like, oh man, I'd love to have you in the gym. And so he came in the gym, he sat with me, we watched everybody work out, at a court on the side, he picked up the ball, started taking a couple of shots. And then next thing is like, what you guys doing? I'm saying, we're doing some shooting. You're gonna jump in, jumped in. And right up until, unfortunately, COVID hit us, he was now scrimmaging. Like he had got up to fitness and he was scrimmaging. And like, obviously, like I'm like a coach in the candy store. Oh
yeah.
my God, imagine like Joel just plays for me. Oh my God, but I respect what Joel's done. And,
Absolutely.
I would never put any pressure on him or anything like that. Just having him in the gym is so amazing for the players, because I want to give my players the best experience they can have. So when it's time to do low post work, I might have some stuff to do, but there's times where I can go, hey, Joe, can we just do low post work? And he does it with a smile on his face. And but the stuff that never changes is that he's competitive. So like the other day we were shooting, him and Skylar were shooting they were shooting it. And then I just heard Joel say, hey, let's keep score.
Yeah, you have to.
And so, yeah. And so then he gets competitive and I'm just like smiling and I'm like,
it's so great.
That's it. So can't say anything, but we just love having him in the gym. I think that he's a positive influence on the players. I think that that's another thing that we have to get right within British basketball is when we're talking about the class of 2012, we need to reinforce and remind people who these guys are, because what they've achieved, we need the young players to aspire to be that. I don't know who the next Pops is. I don't know who the next Lual's going to be. I don't know, who the next Joel's going to be. Right now, there's the Cam Hildreth. There's a lot of excitement about him. So I got my fingers crossed that he could be the one, and that's what as a being in Great Britain or UK, that I think would be big for us to get another NBA player and stuff. But yeah, Joel, excellent, amazing guy, and that word humble comes back into it, has nothing bad to say about anything, just always looking for positives. And I know that he will do some things that will change British basketball. Like just watch this space, but he will do some things that will make a difference.
I think we're all rooting for him to just get involved again, whether he wants to play, whether he wants to buy a BBL team, start a BBL team, represent GB, whatever it is, people want to see him involved. But I think you're right. Just practicing, you mentioned Angola going and playing the dream team and seeing that level and rising their expectations to that level. And even if they're not playing on your team, practicing against, playing against that level of competition, you start to break through what you thought was possible. And, even with me as, I'm 30 now, so I'm getting past my prime, but even having like a really good league that I play in right now, we'll have college players, D1 players come and play with us. We had Spencer Haas come in and play with us, just pick up. And you're just like, how does this 7-footer have this skill set and is able to do it? And then it pushes you to get much better in practice. Like if Joel's out there hitting threes, 9 out of 10 threes, you're like, I got to up my game here. Or I need to pass like that or work like that. So it's good to hear that he's on the floor and that he's raising that level for everyone else.
No, he's there, and he looks after himself. So he's still in shape, and he might have to get his conditioning up. But like as I said, he gets in there and some 2-on-2 work, 3-on-3. And as I said, before the pandemic hit us, he was in a full scrimmage, and we were able to simulate situations because there are some 7-footers in our league, and he enjoyed doing and helping us go through those training sessions.
Yeah. All right. A couple more listener questions as we close this out. This is a fun one from Josh Bett, I'm sure, from Below the Rim podcast. Do you give Kalen just the total green light to shoot? He can just shoot wherever he wants, whenever he wants.
No.
Maybe the opposite of that.
It's the opposite. We've been in the gym and we do stuff. And this is like the part where you get like having like a person like Joel in the gym. And the part that comes with Kalen is I'm probably too hard on Kalen, and I probably hold him back when I shouldn't hold him back, because like Joel will tap me and say, man, he can shoot. Like he straight up can shoot. Like just let him go, And then I'll be like, kind of like, hey, no, Kalen, don't do that. But he doesn't have the green light. I do have a coaching philosophy that I say to the guys that any player can only be as good as you allow them to be. So if you do think that he's a good shooter, get him shots. It's up to the team, all right? Because he can't just dribble it down and jack it the whole time. So that's one thing. So no, Josh, I can tell Josh I don't give him the green light. I probably should be running more stuff for him because he can shoot that ball. So
yeah. It's tough. And that was another question we got from Aaron Emer, where, there's always extra pressure when your son's on the team. And, Doc Rivers and Austin Rivers got criticized, and it was kind of awkward in the locker room from their reports. So the question is, like, how is it trying to deal with that extra pressure of having your son on the team?
I think the one thing for me that makes it easier is he can play and he can
always
shoot.
Easier. Yeah.
So that makes it a whole lot easier for me. The father-son dynamic might not work sometimes, in the sense of when we have to go home and I haven't given him minutes, or I took him out of a game at a crucial time. And as I said, I probably have to look at myself, because I probably punish him to protect him from situations or from people being like, oh, you shouldn't have been in the game. Whereas he's proven that he's more than capable. The first year he played for us was his gap year, and he wasn't supposed to play, but we had injuries. And then he got put on the court, and the next thing, the fans wanted him in the game all the time, and he contributed. And I think we had a close to top 4 finish with the Surrey Heat. Mm-hmm. And that following year, PJ took him to Worcester. Nothing to do with me. That was between him and his talent level. He then had a good year with Solent, with Matt Guyman. Nothing to do with me. And then when he came back, it was like he wanted to coach. Mm-hmm. And so he's coaching at the academy. So to have a backup guard who's coaching and he's not worried about being paid big money to play, just fits into kind of like our structure that we have. So, and the other thing that I think that he's very, very good at is the players trust him, like all the teammates. And so if somebody got, players are going to be disgruntled after each game. And so if players kick off, they know they can kick off in front of him.
Yep.
And he's not going to react or say anything and stuff. And that he's never ever had anything with players, unless he knows it's somebody that's like just totally disrespecting the role, not his father, but the role of being a good teammate or a coach. And that's what I instill in all of the guys. Like if you're not happy about something, I can't fix it if I don't know about it.
Yep.
And so tough dynamic, but I think the fact that he can play and he's got a little bit of a fan base that love him just makes it a whole lot easier for me.
I think it's so important that he played other places and then has come back.
Yeah.
Just, okay, I'm a player. It helps that you have such strong leadership from the player side with Teo and Joel and some of the other veterans. So, it's a really interesting dynamic that, we've seen.
It is. Trust me, I got coached by my late dad, and boy, I'm not like that with Kalen. Like he would be, I thought he was crazy, my dad, because the way he shouted at me in front of thousands of people and then jump in the car, like, great job, son. I'm like, who are you?
It's like a Monopoly game. It's that you just switch personas depending on what the situation is.
Yeah, definitely.
So last question as we close this out. You went on BBC this week, which great to see this more coverage as the BBL has delayed the season, has requested more assistance. We covered this with Josh Bett a little bit on our last podcast as well, where we've talked about basketball, number 2 team sport, at least, through youth development and through schools. It's one of the most popular, accessible, diverse sports in the UK. And so kind of just looking for more funding, where there's a poll going around, or, where give support to British basketball right now. So with your experience, you've been in the UK and the basketball community, British basketball, for a long time. What have you seen that the government would give more funding? Is it based on community? Is it based on the eliteness of the team? It just seems like there's so many factors where it should be kind of a no-brainer for support. What do you think some of the biggest factors that would actually tip this so that the government would support the BBL more and all of the community foundations that are represented here?
So to be controversial, I'd sometimes feel as if basketball is not treated like a sport. Okay. Because one of the reasons I feel that way is because why we don't get certain funding at certain levels is because they will tell us that we're not Olympic medal prospects. We don't have a chance of winning an Olympic medal, or we don't have a chance of winning a world championship. So for us to give you money, we can't invest in that. Just in logic and common sense, how do you become a contender without the funding? Right. If they had to say, right, we're going to invest this all money, we're going to make sure we help the coach, make sure we do this, I have no doubt in my mind that a powerhouse like the United Kingdom will not be able to attract the right coaches or the right amount of help to make it happen. So I think that's one of the things where what hurts us is, it's, as I said, it's not, if it is a sport, it's that American sport. If it is a sport, it's that American sport, or it's that urban sport. And so, like I always have to say to people, like, you know, the beautiful thing about sport is it's like, it's not a seasonal color. So when we say who's playing basketball, we shouldn't have to go like, but understand this, that of all the millions that do play, 80% of them are actually white people. And black and ethnic minorities are still the minority in that, in order to get sport.
All of Asia. It's a huge sport in the Philippines, in China, everywhere. The whole world plays the sport.
Yeah. So people grind it out and work so hard in the communities to try and make stuff thing. I can't think of, I know a lot of people that work in the community and do stuff with their clubs. They're not making a profit.
No.
They're working hard to make the game better, and also they giving the parents a break and helping to mentor those children and make those children into better people, because you can't be a hothead or so forth and just be on the basketball team. Your coach will put you right. They will mentor you and they'll keep you right. So I've been here for a long time. I've seen some funding come and I've seen some funding go and so forth. So it's once again, it comes down to that culture and whether the culture of British sport is willing to give basketball the opportunity to come out. I always joke, we spoke in the beginning about legacy. Mm-hmm. And so my big thing is, I know one of the ladies that works for us, she's been to in the same area and in the same company as Sir Sebastian Coe, who was the lead on the Olympics. And I'd love to have a sit down with him and just say, like, so legacy wise, like,
what are we doing?
What are we doing? What happened to basketball? Like, because I know there's that big stadium where West Ham play now, mm-hmm. the Olympic Stadium. That's where it's been used for football. But, like, you know, there's no basketball stadiums that I can think of that have been there. So I think that basketball needs to get the right patron mm-hmm. that's willing to make some noise. And I think out of the box, like, and that's why I call out like Sir Sebastian Coe, because I feel like he's got that power that could make something as being head of the Olympics and the context that he has. Or maybe we have to go for Piers Morgan, because Piers Morgan, like, as much people hate him and so forth, he gets hurt. So he might get him on our team and he might be able to get us some funding, like when the Good Morning Show was promoting Sir Tom, Captain Tom or so forth, who raised those millions for the NHS. But basketball definitely needs a patron that's going to knock on somebody's door. You know, football gets up so much money, and we're talking about getting a couple of million to make basketball work. So
it's the scale, coming from the States. It's such a smaller scale compared to most professional sports. You know, in the NBA, we're talking about $44 million a year for one player, where you can buy a BBL team for under 10 million, under 5 million for, you know. So
an interesting fact that happens when we watching football is we go, and I got my Man United top on and so forth, but take into context that, you know, like one of your Tottenham players probably gets paid like £150,000 a week.
Yeah.
All right. Some BBL budgets are £150,000 a season.
Yeah. And even
that's a week and then a season. So, and we do a lot in the community. I'm not saying that the football teams don't do stuff in the community, but we always doing stuff. I don't know any BBL franchise or Division I franchise that don't do or give back to their community.
Yeah, they all do. It's such a big part of it too.
Yeah.
So hopefully with the momentum that kind of the London Lions have added a little bit of star power and spark to get more attention, to get more coverage. I think with The Last Dance, which is super funny that a documentary has re-sparked interest in basketball.
Yeah, Piers Morgan was talking about The Last Dance, so we can try and tell
that's
Piers
the feedback
about
I
that
get.
also.
So many people are mentioning Last Dance, like basketball. It's kind of like we're riding that momentum.
Definitely.
And hopefully the season comes back soon. You can figure out a way to come back safely. You know, figure out ways to make revenue, whether through streaming or a TV deal or limited in-fan attendance. So best of luck in the season, Coach. I really appreciate you coming on.
No, thanks, Ryan. So I've enjoyed the conversation, and hopefully your listeners will enjoy it too. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.